In this video, we look at such a watch from Mobvoi. This is a model about 3 GPS. In a sense it is quite a unique model and several factors contributed to this, for example, that a new processor from Qualcomm was installed here for the first time among all wearable electronics. He uses a more subtle technical process and this naturally had a great effect on autonomy. But not the least role in the fate of these watches was played, of course, by Google, not only because the watch runs on the operating system from Google, its VRS, well, thanks to, for example, such a trifle as the fact that in the Google Store these watches appeared already in the very first place among all wearable devices that they work for the VRVS. And I am sure that in this way, of course, the thieves earned some points in favor of their watches at the start of their sales. Probably, it is most correct to start any review with what is in the box, with what a person receives complete with a watch. The watch gets to the user in such a box. Perhaps it will change over time, because if you watch the review much later, then do not be surprised if the box has become different. The manufacturer shows all the main characteristics on the back side. Here it is indicated that the processor from Qualcomm is used. This is a platform for wearable devices with the number 4100. The most important thing, of course, the key thing is that they work on Google's VRS. This is that they keep the battery charge very well. Here the manufacturer himself indicates that this is 72 hours of work. Moreover, the manufacturer writes modestly that it is in some kind of smart mode, but in fact I do not know, I just used them for 3 days, and the autonomy turns out without problems. In a fairly intensive mode of use like this, both with training, with jogging and, in principle, the clock is raked out normally, there are no problems with autonomy. It is very important that the watch has protection according to the IP68 standard. This is also indicated on the package and they can be used to track swimming lessons. Unfortunately, of course I did not check it, because COVID, because probably to take a certificate to the pool you will just have to go through all the circles of hell, or maybe the pool does not work at all. To be honest, I haven't been to it for almost a year, it's a very sad situation. Well, there are a couple more important points that I would like to say to me personally, and which are indicated on the package. This is the presence of a built-in Google Assistant, that is, you can talk to the clock by pressing a button or saying OK Google. You can ask anything you want. For example, how much will there be $54 in hryvnia, that is, Google Assistant will show it without any problems, well, or they're about the weather for tomorrow, or they're about setting a reminder, or checking some smart home sensors. You can ask Google Assistant all this without having to pick up a smartphone, in general. $271 in hryvnia. Remind me to have coffee in 35 minutes. At what time tomorrow dawn in Kiev? Well, the second point, which, it's good that it's here, but it doesn't make me feel warm, not cold. What I'm talking about is NFC. You can pay for hours in stores, the Google Pay payment system is installed here, but surprise, surprise, in Ukraine it all does not work. I don't know how this can be. If Google Pay works on a smartphone without any problems, then, unfortunately, Google Pay does not work on a watch, despite the fact that everything is there for this. It is very, very annoying, although in neighboring countries it all works without problems. I don't know what this is related to. We will wait for some updates and, I don't know, heavenly manna from Google and Mobvoi. I hope this will improve over time, someday. Complete with a watch, so as not to rummage inside the package and not make a big deal out of it, there is only such a little dog. This is a very important thing for this watch, because it is basically the only way to charge them. What is interesting about this cable? There is no separate charging platform here, it is built right into the cable itself. It is very interesting that the platform here is different from other watches, because it does not need to be lost and there I do not know, to break, to spoil, because the performance of the watch will depend on it directly, otherwise it will not be possible to charge them like this and you will probably have to order more from AliExpress if you lose or spoil this cable. One of my most important impressions about the watch is that I did not immediately notice that it was not made of metal. Mobvoi very cleverly handled the materials of the case. The fact that the back cover is plastic is not a surprise to anyone, but the fact that the watch itself is almost completely plastic, I did not notice immediately, and for one simple reason, because the bezel of the watch is made of stainless steel. Just like that, you just look at them, it's like a metal watch, but then you look closely or you are owed on the manufacturer's website and you realize that this whole part is the main one, the whole case itself is also plastic. This plastic looks quite respectable to itself, it does not seem to be somehow unreliable, it does not seem to be somehow made, everything is very precisely fitted, there are no questions from the impression of this watch, everything is very beautifully done and it is generally pleasant to use the watch. The watch has two such buttons, they are pressed quite clearly, with such a good effort. It's always nice, it gives some sense of such reliability. One of the buttons allows us to get into the menu. By the way, using the same top button, you can call for payment using NFC Google Pay, if it works for you, of course. And the second button is responsible for exercises, these are built-in training hours, and you can stop training altogether with the same button. Although it is interesting that the bottom button, it can be reassigned to some other application, perhaps you use something else noticeably more often. The watch has a very interesting dual touch screen. You can touch it in this way and see what is happening on the screen. But mostly the screen is interesting not for everyone here, but for the fact that it is really double. There are actually two screens here. Another screen is installed on top of the high-quality bright amulet of the main one. It is invisible if it is not enabled. In fact, this screen resembles the screen of an ordinary electronic watch, and the presence of this second screen is a really cool idea. Of course, this is not the first watch that came out with such a screen, and those who used or were interested in their watches before already know about this interesting dual-screen technology, but nevertheless, this does not negate the fact that these watches also have it. The most interesting thing is that this screen has a backlight. This screen has quite a lot of information, that is, even without using the main color AMOLED screen, you can practically do everything, well, or learn a lot, for example, about training, using only a black and white screen. And you can choose a mode in which you do not need to activate the color display at all, in principle, during use, but this is especially useful during training, of course. Because during training, you can see a lot of information thanks to this black and white display. There are also speeds, pulse and current time, exercise time. In general, this is a very informative thing, but at the same time it consumes much less energy than the standard color display of this watch or any other. In terms of hardware, the watch is no less interesting than in terms of an unusual dual screen. Here, firstly, we used, as I said at the beginning, a new processor from Qualcomm for wearable electronics 4100, the platform 4100, it's called that. For its manufacture, a more subtle process is involved, which allows it to save energy. And of course, since it is newer, the clock generally works more vividly. For example, the application is much more lively to launch. You don't need to wait a lot, it connects quickly, information is quickly pulled up. Previously, it was because of this slowness that everyone was mostly a little skeptical about the VRS from Google, and now, when applications are launched briskly, quickly, everything works in terms of some kind of graphical implementation, very smartly, the responsiveness of the screen is good, and just launching any application does not take in general, then there is no serious time, then of course. It seems now with this processor, for example, here are such watches or maybe some other. Manufacturers will also start making watches on this platform, they will cause completely different impressions among users than it was some time ago. Such responsiveness and such a quickness of work, perhaps not least, is present here precisely due to the fact that 1 GB of RAM and 8 GB of built-in storage have appeared here, that is, in principle, quite a few applications can be installed here. Another question is whether you will find them in some large number there. By the way, the installation of applications comes from the Play Market. There is a store directly built into the watch. There is not much here, but some useful things can be found in any case. At a minimum, you need to install messengers. Who uses Vibro? Who uses Telegram? There is a Facebook Messenger available in some countries. For some reason, it could not be installed for me, but memory can be used in different ways in these watches. For example, I have a full-fledged Telegram client installed for my watch, and of course it can use the built-in memory quickly enough thanks to the data exchange that takes place inside the messenger. Or for example, here you can install the Spotify application, you can install the Maps application. Again, all this can affect the amount of memory that is used for hours, but I have never had it occupied more than half, it seems to me, something like this, even in such fairly active use. Interestingly, since this is a full-fledged operating system, since this is a real smartwatch, you can use a voice recorder in the application here. I think many people will like this feature. Directly in the mobile app on your smartphone, you can upload those recordings that are made on the watch using the native mobile voice recorder application, which is built in here. Check the quality of the recording.
Проверка качества звучания микрофона в диктофоне. Интересно, как он звучит, интересно, как он записывает, насколько детализированной получается речь при попытке записать ее через диктофон на часах.
But this is software from Iron Chips. Let's move on to what watches can do. The watch can track activity, steps, there is a built-in GPS, this is clear from the name itself. More interesting is that they have constant heart rate tracking, sleep tracking. There is a built-in soft ayna that allows you to track the ambient noise even. Well, this is probably a fashionable feature that the app may have launched or someone else has previously used the watch in order to track how harmful noise is in the environment around you. For example, if neighbors are doing repairs, then you can see how much they exceed the permissible norms and immediately write on the clock. But even more importantly, it is possible to measure the level of oxygen in the blood. There is the right sensor and along with the pulse, the watch can measure the oxygen level in the blood. Of course, again, I remind you, as in any other video where I mention this function, that the watch is not some kind of certified medical device, it just has this function and it makes it possible to navigate about your well-being, about the state, in some sense of your health. Of course it's good that it's here. The watch can also track sleep. Well, to be honest, it's difficult for me to judge the quality of how well they track sleep phases. It seemed to me that they give a slightly higher error in assessing sleep than other watches that I had already tested on my channel there before. Well, maybe it's some kind of completely subjective thing. Let's continue the conversation about the watch by saying that they also have a built-in speaker, they have a built-in microphone, through them you can fully, without any problems at all to talk to anyone. That is, roughly speaking, the watch can be used as such a Bluetooth headset. Is someone calling you? Please pick up the tube here, answer, talk to him. You can be heard quite well if you speak with the help of a watch, and the interlocutor if he broadcasts through the speaker of the watch. The watch has a vibration. Here is the vibration, there is a small question about it, it is generally so weak, I would like to feel it a little more, but at the same time, in principle, I solved this problem with vibration for myself by installing a double vibration and thus simply skipping any the important notification is a little more complicated. Do not forget to pay attention to the fact that both the quality of communication and the quality of another smartphone are evaluated in the comments. And now I have come closer here to the clock in order to demonstrate how the microphone of the clock itself sounds. In the comments to this video, write how you like the sound of the microphone of the watch during the conversation, and also do not forget to subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting videos here. A few more words about purely such physical moments. The watch has a synthetic strap. I do not know, perhaps it is silicone, although it is very similar to leather, due to the fact that there are these lines of threads here, but in fact it is a synthetic material and it only has this part of metal. The strap is absolutely easy to replace. There is a standard watch system here. There will be no problems with this at all. If someone may find it unpleasant there, then without any problems choose any fabric, leather, change. This will be absolutely no problem. Well, probably one of the most important parts for me. This is a workout with a watch. If we talk exclusively about me, then for the most part I'm only interested in running and cycling, and here a huge number of options just open up. Although there are also quite a lot of options for other sports activities. For example, the built-in application has 13 different workouts, of course including my favorite running and cycling. Well, or, for example, swimming lessons, since the watch, as I have already said, is protected by the IP68 standard, they can be easily, without any problems, immersed in water at all. So, returning to sports, there is a very large selection of options. The built-in application of Tic exercises with 13 types of sports, the Google Fit application, there are just some incredible 90 or 60 types of sports, and it seems to me that this list can be updated over time or forcibly just go in and download some additional exercises for yourself. Well, another option, for example, such a thing as on the right. At the moment, I have it installed right as a label on the main screen. You can just click and start running at any time, or choose a bike by default, if you need it. Moreover, it works completely autonomously. You absolutely do not need to take a smartphone with you for training, for example, jogging. There are all the necessary sensors, accelerometer, GPS, please, the watch tracks itself, records the workout, saves the route and synchronizes it with your smartphone through any of the applications convenient for you, so this is probably one of the most fun choices for sports. But there are some nuances in sports. The watch pushes you to use their training app more after all. Why is this happening? Because the most convenient way to use a watch for training is, of course, with the help of this second additional display, which consumes very little energy. And when you launch a native application, it is at this moment that absolutely all data can be tracked on this additional display. And there the speed, and steps, and pulse, and workout time, and even calories are displayed on this screen during the workout. The clock continues to count the so-called walking workout. As before, the pulse and everything is displayed, updated. Therefore, yes, for the owners of such watches, probably the most correct way to use them in training is with the help of a built-in workout tracking application. And to exchange data with the community, you can simply run the application on the right as a background. It will take its data, because here it works like on a micro smartphone. Yes, you can run multiple applications without problems, everything works. Thus, even if the training is very long, the clock will not run out. It is due to the fact that you will monitor all your activity, all your pulse zones with the help of this screen, which consumes a minimum of energy. If you use third-party applications, Google Fit or the same on the right, then, accordingly, there will be no data on this display. It will just be the current time. And in order to raise your hand and see the data about your workout, you will need to use the main color screen, and it will consume, of course, a little more energy. In any case, I think that almost any inhumanly long workout should be enough for a charge of hours. But you know, when you have an additional chip that you can use, of course you want to use it, having such a watch. Here are the statistics at the end of a run with grass. And there is one more nuance. If you use the same application on the right during a workout, for example, jogging, then it remains on the main screen for about 10 minutes, after which it hides and shows you a standard desktop clock, just dials. In order to open with a new look at what stage of the run you are at, you will need to constantly go to the menu and choose. This is very inconvenient to do on the go, on the clock, without stopping. Therefore, it is possible to solve such a problem, for example, with the help of such a dial on which, I'll return it now, on which application shortcuts can be installed. And let's say if I was in the grass, then you can quickly go back to the same grass again. That is, this is just another small inconvenience when the clock itself unloads the application from the home screen and it remains just somewhere to work in the background. The same thing happens with Google Fit, and even with the native application, the same thing happens, that is, for 10 minutes it is shown and displayed to you on the main color screen when you raise your hand. After 10 minutes it disappears and goes into the background, it remains to work in the background. To open the native application, you just need to press the bottom button. And in this way, the watch seems to push you to use native software for training, because other applications are not so convenient to use. Of course, you can leave the grass running in the background or assign it specifically to this button. As I said, the button is reassigned, that is, you can choose any other application here, but naturally a black and white screen that is more energy efficient for another third-party application during training, you will not be able to activate and use, so to speak. The potential of the clock is at its maximum. These are the observations that relate to training and which I wanted to share with those who are planning to buy these watches. Well, about autonomy. Interestingly, there is a battery for 595 mAh. The clock really works for 3 days, and in my case this is the most active use. I also use a voice assistant, and the notification is natural, for a huge number of applications I have involved. They constantly show me all the information that goes to the smartphone. By the way, my smartphone is always with the sound turned off absolutely, sometimes only the vibration remains, and I receive all my notifications exclusively either on the bracelet I wear, or on the watch in this case. So it's not for sure that I'm saving energy on them in any way. The third day of use, the watch finally went to charge. I have them connected to Wi-Fi, as it is here, and to Bluetooth naturally. They say that here the Bluetooth version is still 4.2, although initially the manufacturer claimed the Bluetooth version is 5.0. Well, I don't know, for me personally, in any way, this does not have a negative, let's say, effect. I don't notice any difference in working with devices 5.0 or 4.2. After all, these are not headphones, where there are some additional buttons. It's just a clock that just receives notifications and a certain amount of information is updated from a smartphone. Therefore, even if there is Bluetooth of the 4th version, and not the 5th, for me personally there are no problems with this. If you somehow think otherwise, write in the comments why Bluetooth 5 would be much more important. Well, of course I would like to have a newer version, but on the other hand, again, I don't see any big disadvantages in this. Well, one more small interesting feature. This is what one of those who comment on my videos on the internet noticed, that the clock may not work as fast, the screen does not activate as quickly as we would like during the raising of the hand. I don't see any big problem in this. Perhaps there are some watches that are much more reactive in comparison with the Pro 3 GPS. I don't know, it's somehow not too critical for me, especially considering that there is a second screen here, on which almost all the necessary information is visible all the time. An interesting feature of the watch is also that the screen can be customized in different ways. For example, during the raising of the hand, it is possible that only the black and white screen lights up, the color screen does not turn on at all until you touch or until you press the button. There is also such an option. It will naturally give some more energy savings and some more autonomy for the operation of the watch. Well, with regard to the accuracy of the clock sensors, it seems to me that GPS works absolutely adequately here, at least in training. When I take this watch and some other device, the data in general almost completely coincide. Sometimes there are small discrepancies in the calculation of calories. Yes, it probably depends more on the algorithms that use the software. Otherwise, the data of the watch with some other devices plus or minus coincide. As for the accuracy of the pulse data, here, probably, everything will depend more on how tightly and correctly you put on the watch. It seemed to me that these watches do not give out any large variations with other devices. Plus or minus, everything happens exactly the same way. For example, I had a Huawei watch on one hand while jogging, and I had it on the other hand. Both those and those watches had a pulse corridor installed and it works almost at the same time. The clock notifies me that you have exceeded the specified pulse rate corridor. At least during my runs, I have such impressions of the watch. I don't know, I haven't been involved in other sports, perhaps in some other types of sports, in the training of some others, the data will somehow differ. Maybe they will mess up there, but at least when jogging, it seems to me that the watch evaluates all the data on the pulse very adequately. Well, the measurement of oxygen in the blood, again, I compared them with the Huawei watch, shows a plus or minus. There is literally a 1–2% spread, it is very small. I think we can be absolutely calmly guided here as an assessment of the level of oxygen in the blood, plus or minus. Again, this is not a medical device, so if they suddenly show something there, then you definitely need to check first of all some of your own important data, vital data from the doctor, and not just focusing on the clock. Well, of all the data, I personally have the most doubt, probably, about how the watch tracks sleep. More or less with firmware updates, this has been fixed, and it seems to me that now they are already giving out a very similar picture, plus or minus, but in fact here are the same Huawei watches. It seems to me that they track sleep much more accurately. And in general, with such a rather large heavy watch, it is not quite convenient to track sleep. It seems to me that it is not at all advisable in principle to use a large watch. For such purposes, a small compact bracelet is better suited, which will not cause you any discomfort at night. And a big watch is more like that. Personally, I used it as an experiment, and not for any serious purposes. To connect the watch, an application from Google VRUS is used. By the way, they can be connected both to devices on the speaker and to devices on Android. Please, any option from all of these is suitable. And to connect, first of all, an application from Google is used. This is in the ROS. It's so straight, that's what it's called in its app stores, from where you will download them. The main task of this application is to transfer your account to the watch and how to activate them, start their work. There you can also choose notifications from different applications, from which they will come to the clock, from which they will not come at your request. There you can also install different dials directly from the application. By the way, they can be easily changed both on the watch and in the application from Google in Russia. Well, the second application is mobile. It is already a little more there with wide functions. On it, you can track not only the state of the watch there is a charge type and just change the dials, but also track all your activity due to the fact that the watch collects it and synchronizes with this application. Right in this application there is a calendar where all the activity that you have been doing is scheduled by day, especially if the training was carried out using a mobile watch, but even if you trained in another application, the clock still draws your activity, shows your distance that you have walked in kilometers, minutes, activity, and so on similar. Also, data is pulled up there about if you measured the noise around you, oxygen level in the blood, I mean of course, and pulse data is also stored there. That is, it is such a big hub when there is all the information about your activity and how its hours were recorded, filmed and saved. Of the small features that this application has, it is that you can save screenshots taken on your watch there. Oddly enough, the watch is smart and of course they are able to take screenshots of the information that is on the watch. For example, you called a taxi driver there through Uber, looked through the clock, he went somewhere wrong, you just fixed some of these things that will be visible on the application screen, of course, the clock. Also, in the application, you can get recordings of the dictaphone that were made here, and you can also transcribe them, that is, translate them into text. But this surprise service is paid. And something tells me that the Russian language is probably not there. We are probably talking about English and maybe a couple of other languages. Be sure to share your impressions about these watches in the comments to my review. I will be glad to read your thoughts, what you think about them, or maybe you use them, because I know that a lot of people have already ordered them for themselves and they have accumulated some experience. Do not forget to leave all the most important things in the comments to this video. Others, including me, will be very interested to read all this. And Roma was with you before the new videos.
Ты подпишись на мой канал, ты колокольчик нажимал, проверь. Ты подпишись на мой канал, подпишись на мой канал.